Hey, welcome back to Vortex Garage, and we're here with our 89 XJS, and well, we're going to do a stereo upgrade in it. We're going to get rid of the aftermarket tape deck that's in it. We're going to put in something with Bluetooth. Now we have a couple options here. As you know from our initial inspection video, we talked about using a Continental stereo, but I found an alternative and I think I want to use it. So I was able to locate a single DIN Apple CarPlay Android Auto capable head unit. It's extremely cheap, so the quality is maybe a little suspect, but I'm really curious to try it out because stuff like that just kind of gets me interested. Now, originally I was looking for something that would look kind of period correct in one of these vehicles, and well, I've shifted slightly because I do believe that having something with a screen that isn't obnoxious looking will actually look okay in the XJS, and I have another reason. I think I'm going to put the Continental temporarily in the 83 XJ6. The reason being, I plan to pull the cassette deck out of the 83 XJ6 because it's having a few issues. I want to go through and clean it and check it out. But I'm also trying to figure out how to add Bluetooth to that unit. So what I'd like to do is have some time, take it in on the bench, work on it when I have time, and see if I can integrate a Bluetooth adapter into the original radio on the XJ6. Now, judging by my time, don't look for that video anytime soon because frankly, I don't know when I'm going to have a chance to get to that. I don't even know when I'm going to pull it out. But with that thinking, when I do pull it out, I'd like to have something to listen to in that car. So I figured, why don't I put the Continental in the XJ6 and go ahead and try out this single DIN Android Auto capable head unit that I found. Now, I believe it'll fit, but there's a potential it won't, and we'll show you why. Let me go ahead, walk you over to the bench, and we'll show you the two stereos that we have as options, because one way or the other, we're putting one of them in this car today. All right, so we do have a few options for our radio here in the Jaguar XJS. And well, I'm going to put one of these two in. Let's talk about what we have. So before we talk about these, really quick, the wiring that I've picked up. Because the car already has an aftermarket stereo and I'd like to be able to swap stereos periodically, I'm going to try to standardize some of the wiring in this car as well as if I do it in the XJ6. So I've gotten some ISO connectors, as well as this particular one, which does go to a very standard looking 16 pin, but I don't think this uses that. So we have the option of, if our wiring lines up in our aftermarket stereo, I could use this just as is, but I don't think it will. So we'll just be able to cut this off, save a little bit of pigtail, do some soldering or crimping, whatever we want to do to get that on. But we have these, which should clip in to here, no problem. And these should line up just fine. These are ISO connectors, so they should be standard. So we'll post links to these, but what we're going to do is convert our Jaguar wiring and our stereo wiring to ISO on both sides. We can even do the same with the original radio, so if we want to swap between radios, we have the option of doing that. So as you all know, originally I was going to go with the Continental radio, which we'll show you in a second, but I came across this as a potential option. This is a single DIN Android Auto Apple CarPlay stereo that I got for like 70 bucks. So yeah, I don't know how good it's going to be. We're going to find out. So let's take a quick look at it. I'll be honest with you, they give you a whole lot of stuff here. I'm not sure what this little box thing is. We'll have to figure that out. I don't know if it's just for the remote. It does come with some base wiring. Like I said, this is a little different than that 16 pin, so we'll figure all that out later. I guess we could look at that and figure something out, but heck with that. You also get a backup camera and a few other little bits and pieces, but I don't think I'm going to run the backup camera. I'm just going to install this as a Android Auto capable stereo. Here you go. It's a single DIN with a screen, and we'll save that for when we peel it off. You can kind of see the screen there. But as you can tell, it's not quite a full single DIN. It's a single DIN fitting, but it does have about 3/4 of an inch on top there. So I'm not sure that this is going to fit into the cavity in the XJS. If it doesn't, then we'll use it in another vehicle at a later time. If it does, we'll run it temporarily. I don't want to modify the dash just to run this. If so, we'll use the Continental. Pretty standard unit. Looks like it's got a little radio antenna. I don't know if that's for onboard Wi-Fi or if that's for the remote. There's another connector here for that. So, we'll figure it all out. But all in all, very lightweight, build quality, we'll see how it works. For the price, I remember anything that had a screen on it back in the day, and by the way, I picked this one out because it has a knob, But anything that had a screen back in the day, I remember when that was $1,000 radio, no matter what. Now it's 70 bucks. So. All right. So the challenge for today is, can I remove this without blocking your view too much? And that's going to be tough. So first of all, we got our wheels blocked. Now our current stereo is expertly installed in that it doesn't really require anything to remove it. So now you might look at it and say, gee, your job's really easy. Someone's done all the work for you. Well, since they have, I'm going to go ahead and pull it out so it's not in the way and see what kind of wiring we have back here. I'm really afraid, I'll be honest with you. Let me add in my phone camera just so you do get a good view. So as you can see here, our JVC cassette deck that is running a CD changer, by the way, which we're going to decontent. But yeah, that's not really held in there at all, which is good. It makes it easy. Now, to remove everything here, to remove these, we're going to pull these knobs. Now this one does pull out to allow you to change, I guess, between manual and automatic. And this is just your fan speed one. Now these are simple. We're just going to literally pull them off. And then if you look in there, you've got these barrel nuts. There is a little tool you can get. You could use some really thin needle nose pliers, would work perfectly. I'm going to try to use just a flat blade screwdriver. You know, one of the things that got in the toolbox will get that off. This one pulls off a little more tough, but it'll come off. And we're going to take the radio out first, though, and then once we have these off, we can panel pop this, lay the plate down, and have access to see what we need to do. All right, let's just go ahead and pull this thing towards us and see if there's enough wiring loom. Oh, yeah. Oh, geez. I say that because I don't like any work that anyone else did, ever. I'm never happy. And then this probably is your CD changer control. That was easy. It was probably the easiest stereo removal ever. If anyone wanted to steal this, they could have done it pretty easily. Please take it. No, I'm seriously going to put that in the bin, not the trash bin. I'm going to put that in the storage bin because we've all thrown out so many radios in the past that are now becoming retro cool. That stereo will be one of them. All right, look at this. Look at this lovely, lovely. Oh, they left the original wiring. Mostly. At least the speaker wiring. So this should be the speakers. And then, of course, we have the power and everything there. I have the battery disconnected, if you're wondering. This really isn't that bad. These are, looks like it was decently crimped. I've seen way worse. They're insulated crimps. Honestly, the only thing I could really gripe about is the way it was slid in, but it wasn't flying out with the faceplate. It was pretty decently installed. So we should be okay. So now I'm curious, before we go any further, I'm going to shove this wiring in here. We have the battery disconnected, so no concerns there. This is our new unit. I'm going to see if it's going to fit. So I'm going to slide off this bracket. Here's our wiring. I don't want to scratch it up. But is this unit even going to fit in here? Let's find out. There we go. Look at that. That actually looks really nice. That fits in there perfectly. All right, I'm excited now. This is the right move. All right, so let's move that out of the way. Now we can go ahead and get rid of this. We're going to use the DIN adapter that it came with, so don't worry about any of that stuff that we just did. So we'll try not to mangle this too much, but basically these are held in. There's little push pins in the back, not push pins, but little slots you can slide down that lock them into wherever they go. And there's a lot of different ones based on the type of vehicle. You'll see them in there. It looks like on this car they've pushed the ones on the side all the way over, which holds it in nice and tight. So pretty easy, but to get that out, you know, I could use a pick and try to come in there, but I'm going to go ahead and remove this plate anyway. So there's a Jaguar tool that you can use. You could also do a screwdriver, which that actually works really well. Why would I do anything else? I think even you can see that, hopefully. All right, that worked super well. It's almost like you just turn the thing and it spins right around. There, look, that one's off. That one's off. And we'll just come around with a panel popper. Oops, pop that loose. Let's go ahead and pull this out. And we need to lay it down. But I'm going to need to get this off. That's going to prevent me from laying this. I don't want to pull any of the cabling under here. So I'm going to have to come in and figure out how to get into this. I'm going to block your view for a second. All right, the pick worked good to just go in the sides there. We should be able to... Let's try not to mangle it too much. All right, there we go. Now we should be able to pop this off and just lay it flat. Now the good news is someone's been here. They've taken out, looks like they used screws on this one. I believe on some of the earlier cars these might have been riveted. Now so the wiring here, I don't want to even bother disconnecting it. I think I can just lay this out of the way and keep everything good. In the meantime, come in here and I can start doing some of my wiring work. So we're going to work on the wiring a little bit. What I want to do is just kind of figure out if it matches what the car wiring says. It should. But what I've got here is something I keep in my go bag. It's a little card tester. So we'll try putting this one to work today. How scary is that? Looks like a big ground strap. And we got a ground hook too in here. I'm kind of scared about what's in there. What do you think? But let's check the wiring first. So this matches what should be on the back of all the radios to kind of give you an idea of what they are. But of course, being Jag on the opposite side, the wire colors are a little different. So red to red, yellow to yellow, white, which seems to go to this blue. That's like your amp one. And then you have the blue, which I think is your dimmer, which looks like it's been disconnected on this one. So let's check. Okay, so this one right here, this red, looks to be our constant. Geez, look at these thin wires on this. This would mean this yellow that goes to red would be our... Yeah, nothing on that one. Now if we turn the car on, turn the key to run, or at least to, let's try it just on the first one. There you go, we got our 12 volts. Okay, so this is our key on. This is our constant. This looks like it's our amp turn on. And that's probably got to come from the stereo being enabled. And this is our dimmer. I'm not sure what the dimmer is going to give. Let's try turning the lights on. Yeah, we get... I just have the battery lightly connected. There we go, so 12 volts. So with the key on and the light on, that's our dimmer. Alright, so it looks like on this car, the thin red is your constant. This would be your keyed source, is the yellow. And that kind of makes sense. So keyed source on the back's the bigger wire. That's your keyed on ignition source. The red wire is your constant. The white wire is your remote. And the red with the white is your dimmer. And these are all speaker which fortunately, I think on the speakers I might keep this and just put an ISO connector on the end of it. I don't think I'll do it here because that's just a lot of connections for the power. I'd like to take the power straight out of here to the ISO. So I think that's what we'll do for the 4 power line ones. But for the speakers, we can make an ISO to Jag connector so we're not cutting up this harness. And this, I'll just be able to store, and if we want to put it back in, we can always reconstitute it because we've got plenty of wires. Gonna work on this and just hack through it. Hopefully not hack too much, but our little card thingy worked just fine. All right, so remember this thing that the ground was attached to, and I figure this is probably some sort of a ground strap. Well, I went ahead to see what we were going to see here. Now, remember, I was even saying that some of the wiring here, even, with these crimps, it looked pretty decent. But I knew I'd uncover something that we could all chuckle at. And that's this. So it was just taped on there. Someone just wrapped this around as a ground. Yeah, it works. And it worked obviously for years. But we're not gonna do that. So now looking in here, what I'm finding interesting is there's no ground in this harness anymore. There should have been a ground in one of those middle pins. So that ground is missing. I'm not seeing it laying in there. And hey, this is a ground strap. It's a valid ground. I have no necessarily major issues using it. I just need to attach it better. So I think what I'm going to do is convert this ground wire, or a new ground wire, with a eyelet on it, and put a little nut and bolt, a real small nut and bolt there, and then just wrap that up and tuck that underneath our dash here so it's out of the way and not going to hit anything. I think that would be fine. Not my most ideal thing in the world, but I'll look around and see if I can find an actual ground back here. I mean, there's all kinds of wires and everything, and trying to avoid stripping the thing apart completely. Eventually the waterfall piece is going to come out to get veneered, and when I'm doing that, I could always, pull a whole new ground straight to a ground underneath here. But I think for the time being, I don't see anything wrong with using this. It's not ideal. I wouldn't necessarily say do it, but I'm going to do it. And I think what I'm going to do is just use a little eyelet and secure it with a nut and bolt, wrap it up with a bunch of tape, make it so it's, even if it did, it's just a ground, and then just tuck it in there so it doesn't interfere with anything. And this should tuck far enough back into the cavity there. It should be completely out of the way of everything. So that's what I'm going to do. And yep, you can tell me how horrible that is in the comments, and I'm going to agree with you. I'm not liking that I'm going to do that, but hey, it's better than that, and it'll work for us. All right, so this came with its own little wiring diagram, but I'm not quite agreeing with it because it states that the red should be your accessory positive, or your key on, and your yellow is your constant 12-volt positive. As you can see here, the yellow is a thicker gauge than the red. Now, taking a look online at some ISO connector standards, I've gone ahead and written it out here, and this matches up very well. This one, you see pin number 4 is your 12-volt constant, which is the red one, and your ground and your 12-volt switch, which is the yellow one. If we look here, that's what we see. We got our ground, our 12-volt ignition, accessory, switch, whatever you want to call it. And we've got the red one there, which is pin number 4. That is going to be our constant. And then we've got our orange, which is our dimmer. Our blue, which is our amp or antenna signal. And then these 3 other wires we're not going to use. They're there if you want to use them. Basically what these are: speed signal for pin 1, a phone mute for pin 2, and not used for pin number 3. And then of course with the other one, we're just going to have our speaker outputs. Pretty simple. Right rear, right front, left rear as you go across. And we'll just work those into the Jag wiring. For the time being though, I'm going to go ahead and install this one into the vehicle. And I'm going to trim these ones that aren't being used. But really what we have to do is go ahead and install and crimp 5 of these, because we're going to use 2 of the power, 1 ground, a dimmer, and a remote switch. All right, so here's where we're at. I've got this wired into the car, and I did swap 2 of the wires on these connectors, and this is the switched 12 volt, and this had the big yellow wire on here. And then on the ISO connector where the constant 12 volt was a very thin red wire. So what I did is I had a couple of these that I was trying out. I went ahead and took a thicker yellow wire, popped out the terminal, and put that one in. And then I put red heat shrink on that and wrote SW for switched and constant. Here's the wiring for the stereo with the ISO connector female side. And same deal on this one, because the stereo itself seems to be operated by the constant and then switched on with the ignition. I did move the wires around, so I put the thicker yellow wire where the red one goes and then swapped the red one there. And these are really thin wires, which is kind of a bummer, but they go to the corresponding wire on the harness. All these I'm not using. I'm not doing the backup camera, but I didn't want to cut them too short. I just capped them off. So there we go. Speaker wires are hooked up, but I have not done the speaker connector for under here yet. I did do my ground, as you can see, with the little bolt there. I'm going to cover that up with some tape, but that shouldn't be a problem for right now. All right, we're going to take our radio. I'm going to go ahead and plug into the back of it. All right, and I'm going to plug in my ISO connector, and I'm just going to set it here. And assuming I did this somewhat right, assuming I did that somewhat right, this should turn on when I turn the battery on and then put the key in. So for now, I'm going to turn the battery on in the car, make sure nothing smokes or pops. Oh, no, nothing's smoking or popping. All right, now I don't have any speakers hooked up, so we can't test the speakers, and I'm not going to run it long without speakers because that's not good for the outputs, but I do want to see. Will this turn on? Hey! Let me turn this off. Hang on a second here. Android. It's taking forever to boot up. There we go. Is this going to be every time I turn the car on? Is it gonna do that? Like, or are the wires backwards and it's going to boot up like this every time? There we go. So yeah, we're halfway down the road and it's running. All right. Just out of curiosity, if I pull the key off. All right, so it shuts off. If I put the key back on, is it gonna fire up? Oh, look at that. So it looks like once it boots up, it must go into some sort of sleep mode. I hope it, but I am someone who disconnects my battery when I'm done, so probably gonna have to boot that up every time I run it. All right, there you go. Comes out of sleep mode, I guess. So, good news is it's working. I don't see anything bizarre with the wiring. I'm going to clean up the ground. I'm going to disconnect the head unit. So we'll go ahead and get our speakers connected, and then I'll go ahead and plug the speakers into our ISO connector. And the nice thing is I can just disconnect my head unit, but also, since I'm using these ISO connectors, I just come in here. There we go. So yeah, I'll disconnect that. I'll fix this really fast. All right, that blocked the camera. There it is, pushed back in. So we're going to cover this up. We'll go ahead and get our speakers plugged into the original plug. We'll plug in our speakers, cover that up, and probably cover this up and just shove it back in there. And then we'll go ahead and do one final test. All right, we've been soldering these. We got these all done and heat shrinked up, using that as our guide. Looks like we have them all done. I will post an image from a forum that someone took. I don't have a stock radio, but it was a picture of what was on it. These appear to line up, but you can kind of see the colors here. Probably going to be really hard for you to see, and honestly, I kind of cheated a little bit. I'm hoping the prior owner had it right. I just cut them and looked at what color was on it before and put them on. So I now have this going to my ISO connector for speakers. We can go ahead and hook that up to our head unit and plug this in, and we'll be able to test. Battery's still disconnected. But we have our wire. Go ahead and plug in our speakers. I can just get under you for a second, because these go one very specific way. Alright, so speakers are connected. Let's plug in our power into our ISO connector here. So, now, I have not taped that up yet, so we'll get there. I'm going to go ahead and plug in my radio. Just going to set it there. We're going to go turn the power on to the battery. Now I assume it's going to want to boot up again. I'm not too worried about that. I do want to try my USB-C. Pull the door in for you. Alright, so we got power, we're booting up. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I got speakers. Okay. Let's see what happens if it really has Android Auto. So it looks like that might just be for charging. Might not be able to do stereo through there. So let's just see if we can do Bluetooth for the time being. Sure. Bluetooth connected. Bluetooth call, listen to Bluetooth music.
There with Brother Weeze and the gang.
Oh, all right. Hey, look! Android Auto just decided to open. So unfortunately, I don't think I can play Android Auto and not have copyright violations. So let's go play our latest video on Vortex Garage. In this 2024 Honda CR-V with the hybrid drivetrain. Now this is actually the first oil change for this vehicle. It's over 1,500 miles. Now nothing's popped up on the maintenance minder yet, but just in general, I prefer to do an earlier oil change as part of that break-in. Now we are going to be following the Honda service steps today, but I do want to disclaim this video a little bit. This is really for entertainment purposes, just to kind of bring you along as we do it. It's not meant to be a how-to. If you're not familiar with doing something like this is your nice new car. You should take it somewhere and have it done. If anything, for those people in that situation, this video can help tell you. We're not going to cover how to lift the vehicle safely. Obviously, we're using our two-post lift, but what if you're using ramps? What if you're using jacks and jack stands? There's all kinds of safety stuff that you have to take in mind, not to mention all the things that you have to be careful with when you're changing the oil on a new vehicle. So, just to let you know, that's what this video is. That's working. Now this 2024 CR-V does have the hybrid drivetrain. It is the 2-liter engine, not the 1.5 turbo that we featured in our 2018 CR-V.
That works.
So, although it looks like the service steps are somewhat similar, there are a few differences.
All right, so our speakers are correct.
Being a hybrid drivetrain, you're going to have to get this thing up to temperature to help the oil flow. It's something instantly.
All right,
and
everything's good.
I'll show you. How does it know how fast I'm going? Do you think it... Oh, it's got a GPS. That's right. How freaking cool is that? All right. I think we've played around enough with it. And it's a cool little unit. So I'm going to disconnect this. And we're going to set it aside. We're going to go ahead and tie everything back up and get this thing installed and go have some fun. Of course, I forgot to turn the frickin' video on when I was pushing it in. but I plugged the antenna in and the connector, and I just slid it in, and you got to miss me peeling that off. You can watch me push those back on, and we're gonna shut the car door. We're gonna turn the key on. There we go. Left the radio on. Look at this. Hey, welcome to Vortex.
There it goes.
We've got our 1989 Jaguar XJS convertible back on the lift. It's pretty much just wrapped up its major service. We've done a couple test drives. What we wanted to do was go ahead and bring you here and show you all the things that we've finished before we have some other videos ready. The main reason we're doing that is because our original plan was that we would do a couple weekends of work and have this thing running and driving and take it out on Easter Sunday. Well, Easter Sunday came and went, and we frankly found more. This car had already been moved over to that and converted, but I went ahead and replaced that with a brand new coil. We have the original one we can use as a Well, I like it. All right, so that's going to pretty much wrap us up for today. As you can see, we've got the stereo installed, and it works really well. Yeah, obviously it's not the highest end stereo in the world, but it is a $70 head unit that plays YouTube. Pretty cool. Has Android Auto, wireless, Apple CarPlay. And well, it seems to be working well so far in the Jag. We'll see how it runs long term. Now, as you saw, I skipped over some tasks that would have been nice to add to this radio, which we'll decide if we want to do at a later date, because I'm not sure that I'm going to keep it, so I didn't want to go through the trouble of running all the wires for it. Number one, it does have a GPS receiver that allows you to do some telemetrics on the car, so like speed, but I have a speedometer, I don't really need that. It has a backup camera I'm not going to put in, and I didn't wire the external microphone for the Bluetooth. I don't think that should be an issue, but if I get annoyed and want to put it in, as you saw, it's pretty easy to go ahead and pull the stereo out and go ahead and run wires. I just didn't want to take the dash apart and fish things and mess things up. I think honestly it's good the way it is. Now, as you saw, we converted it to an ISO setup in terms of the wiring, and that was probably about the longest thing that it took. Once that was in there, it just plugged in and went. So we could very easily unplug that stereo, take out our ISO connections, and plug something else in. So we've set ourselves up for an easy swap in the future, but in the meantime, I think it looks pretty cool. We're going to go ahead and run it for the time being. Now, eventually we're going to put that Continental stereo into our 83 XJ6, and then one of these days I'm going to go through the old cassette radio from the 83 and see if we can clean it up, see if we can make it work a little better, and also see if we can add Bluetooth to it natively, which would be kind of cool, not a tape deck adapter or anything like that. So stay tuned for all that. If you like what you're seeing, do us a favor, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Either way, we'll have more for you here soon on Vortex Garage.